Welcome back to Speak Pact. I'm thrilled that you are here with me today. We are going to climb some mountains together with world renowned record setting mountaineer Jenn Drummond. And I'm so excited to dive into the conversation with you because with your career in climbing mountains, you've also really developed some very strong leadership strategies that you now speak on worldwide. And I want to tap into that. I love your spirit. I love your ability to accomplish when it feels like, yeah, pun intended, right? An uphill battle. So let's dive right into that. Um, Everybody, welcome Jenn Drummond. She is a global keynote speaker, an entrepreneur, a world record setting mountaineer. She's the first woman to climb the 7 second summits. I don't even know what that is, so let's dive into that a little bit. She now brings her won lessons of resilience, leadership, and personal and professional vision to stages across the world. Her mission is simple: help people climb the mountains in their own lives. And she knows how to do that firsthand. So, welcome to the stage.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today here. It's such an honor.
I'm excited. Actually, hiking and climbing I'm not a mountain climber, but I'm an avid hiker. It's near and dear to my heart. And I love the way that you took the principles of something that is very practical. I think something we should all be doing, right? If it's walking or hiking, getting out there in nature and really kind of challenging ourselves. You took those principles that you learned along the journey and packaged them in a way that now helps corporations and individuals reach the summits and the peaks in their own lives. So what took you from award winning, world class mountaineer to I think I'm gonna package this up and start doing talks and training corporations on some of
Yeah.
the principles
I'll
they've
be
learned.
honest, it was on accident at first. I was awarded a medal from the governor in Utah, and they made like a TV thing out of it, and it was in the newspapers and all this different stuff. And so a company called me and said, "Hey, just saw you got this big award. Would you be willing to talk to my company and like motivate my employees?" I said yes. I did not have a speech figured out. I did not know how I was going to package these into stories or anything else like that. But I'm a firm believer that if you say yes, you will find a way. And so then I had to hire somebody to help me get all my thoughts organized and put on paper and flow into a speech. That speech went really well and opened doors to other speeches.
That's how it goes, huh? I
It
think
does.
it really breaks my heart when a speaker will say, "Oh, it's not a paid engagement. I'm not going to go speak at that whatever engagement." And I know, gosh, there's so many decision makers in that audience. They need to find you. They need to hear you. They need to experience you. And strategic, right? You're not just throwing yourself out there for free. But if I could pay to get on like JJ Virgin stages or some certain stages, I know the value of that room. And somehow early on, that organically happened for you, which is great. But that's what really launched your career. Right from there, stemmed other opportunities, and with each advancement, usually also the opportunity itself becomes a higher value, right?
Oh,
Opportunity
definitely.
monetarily.
And if I look back on my beginning speeches, I'm like, "Oh, I can't believe I did that. Like, how embarrassing." But it's truly these repetitions of doing the speech, delivering the speech, learning what lands, where people laugh, where you start to see people drift off in the audience. Those are all cues on how do I make this tighter, better, and stronger. So for me, it's been the whole process of the experience and how I get to be an even stronger speaker. And I am so proud of who I am today. And I'm also proud of the girl that said, sure, let's figure it out and struggled through it. And only now can I really see, eek, not my best performance, but it was my best performance then. And here we are.
Jen, you touched on something that is extremely important, and I don't want to gloss over that. I've got my list of questions that I want to ask you, but I'd like to camp out here just for a moment because this is so important. I think that people see, the people I work with, and probably at this level, the people that you work with now, they're high achievers in one area or another. They've paid their dues, right? They expect a certain level of, stepping in my world into the speaking and corporate training space because they've already paid their dues. Well, no, the ticket taker, it's starting back over. You are collecting data, new data every time you get on a stage, not just data about the audience, but really data about yourself. What am I loving speaking? What do I feel like I'm seeing the smiles and the light bulbs go off, when I say this and deliver it in this particular way? You're collecting all of that data, and that really determines your brand as a speaker. We can pre-brand you, but really you more step into that brand in finding your unique style you may not even realize you have, and finding your way to connect with the audience in only the way Jenn Drummond can. You and I can give a word for word exact speech, right? Exact talk, but different people are going to respond to me and the way that I deliver, then they're going to respond to you. So that nobody can step into your shoes. And I really, really love that. Engagements come with different levels of payment. So if you're only looking at the host check, you're leaving a lot on the table,
Hmm.
right? First of all, the audience is going to outpace any check that you would get from even at that, even some of the highest paid engagements. But then payment comes in many different forms, right? It comes in that self discovery and audience discovery, that data collection, but also in the other people that you meet. I always have my speakers kind of list the top 50 stages that their heroes have been on. And because there's something about that, if they're attracted to those stages in that environment, that says something about who they are. So let's aspire for those stages. Um, you're also getting those other engagements. You hopefully getting some great video coverage, meeting some very fabulous people in the space. This industry is all about relationships. So if you're just like, if it's not paid, if I don't get that host check, I'm not going to do it. You're missing the point, right? If you're serious about a serious speaking business, going into it in the way that you just kind of haphazardly did is really, as a consultant who's been in the industry for now a little over 30 years, is one of the first things that I actually guide speakers in. And thankfully, you just had that, probably from your mountaineering, you had that frame of mind where I know it's going to be uphill. I know there's going to be some things I'm going to need to learn and navigate, along that trail to where I want to get. Sounds to me like you didn't even know you wanted to get there. So you had to kind of create the map as you went. Let's talk a little bit about that. So yes, it kind of, the doors opened for you,
Hmm.
but to get to the level that you are now, there had to be some stops and goes and maybe even restarts. Let's talk about that journey in your particular career that might help some speakers who are just emerging up that mountain.
Yeah, I think you're going to learn audiences that you resonate with. And so when you resonate with the audience, you leave feeling charged and they leave feeling empowered. So in the beginning, you don't know what that is because you haven't spoken in front of enough different groups of people. So I always encourage people to say yes to as many opportunities as they can in the beginning. And then later on decide, oh, you know what, this is my wheelhouse and maybe this isn't. And when you run into something that isn't your wheelhouse, like find people who it is. And so then you can say, you know what? I really appreciate this opportunity. It's not the best fit for my message based on experience that I've had. I really want you to have a great experience. Here's a couple speakers that I recommend that I think would fit your audience well. So for me, being a female athlete and entrepreneur and achiever, like women's audiences are amazing for me. Women's health symposiums are amazing for me. Masterminds where people are getting into the technical nitty gritty of how to live this elite lifestyle are excellent for me. Accounting firms just are not my wheelhouse. I love them, but those environments don't give me enough feedback. So I feel like I'm talking to a wall. And that's hard for me to stay in character for the entire 45 minutes or 30 minutes of my speech. And so when I run into people that are these like number counters, engineers, or whatever, I just tell them, I'm like, I can share my story, but I actually think these people would fit your story better because that's the audience they serve more. And you actually, I know it sounds hard because in the beginning, you just want every deal possible, but you also want to give your best performance possible because that's where you get referrals. And if I know that environment isn't going to shine a light on my best parts of myself, it's actually doing me a service to say no, refer it off, and stay in my lane.
That integrity goes a long way and people remember it, right?
Yeah,
You're building in that law of reciprocity without it feeling like you're trying to. You're being true to yourself, to your message, to your audiences. At the same time, you are serving that decision maker who's oftentimes their job or some project is on the line for making the best fit decision for who they're going to bring in. So they'll have that feeling of thankfulness. Well, she was up front. I was going to hire her, right? But she was really upfront about not being the best fit. I didn't see it. She saw it, and she referred me to someone that really did work out great. That's going to stick. They're going to remember that, and there will be either other opportunities to refer you and you'll come up in their mind, or another engagement that would come up in their own sphere that you are the better fit for. Really
definitely. And
love
I've
that you
had that
did that.
actually happen, right? So I had a wealth management office be like, hey, here's who we think you should talk to in our group. I said, you know what? That's actually probably not the best fit for me. But if you ever do a client summit or something like that, that's probably a better fit for my story and what I share. And they were like, okay, great. And so they hired me for a different deal than what they originally called me for because I was just upfront and honest. And when they felt like, oh my gosh, she sees me, she cares that I look good in front of all these people, I trust her. And that trust goes so far.
You somehow got clarity on your speaker identity, right? On your archetype. How did you, other than doing some of these initial kind of free or low paid talks, what other work did you do to really soak into or discover your UVP, right? Your unique positioning, the value proposition that you bring to the table, the way you love to deliver, and the subjects that you love to deliver on. How did you find that speaker identity?
Yeah. I think it helps by attending other events and looking at those speakers on that stage, reading the audience of how they're responding and saying, okay, am I like that speaker or am I not like that speaker? Not that that's good or bad. It's just being aware of who you are and watching how other people deliver and how they land their stories and how it hits and moves people. In the beginning, I went to so many speeches. I went to free seminars at our local library. I went to a speaker series that a local town did. I had friends that were speakers that I said, hey, can I film some content for you and be in the back of the room so I can just see how you deliver and what you're doing? So, a lot of it is what can you witness from others to help you with your own, not just trial and error by yourself.
And I feel like in that, I love that strategy. It seems, it's oftentimes what seems too easy, right? Too basic is skipped over because, like, I'm beyond that. I don't need to do that. But that's foundational. And we don't have a foundation. We're just kind of all wobbly. And it's going to be a harder, you ever try jogging in the sand, right? It's just going to be a
Mhm.
harder journey to where you actually want to get to. And something that we spoke about earlier before getting online, um, briefly, was I'd like to tap into. So you have a talk, right? You've
Mhm.
got a message, you've got it all packaged and pretty, but how do you turn that message into a movement that, number one, you're sticky, right? Your message
Mhm.
becomes sticky. People actually start implementing some of the solutions that you've brought to the table. You become unforgettable when you create a message versus when you create a mission and a movement versus you're kind of
Inspiration,
forgettable when
right?
you just deliver a message, right? Yes, go.
Yeah. So, it's interesting with my speech because I set a world record. So chances are most people in the audience are not going to set a world record. So I can't keep myself on that pedestal and my audience away from me. I need to somehow bridge that gap so that they find themselves in my story. And so for
Mm.
me, it's very often I'm bringing back to like the girl before my car accident, the girl that was checking boxes, going through the motions, wondering, will this ever end? That's a universal story we all have. And then I flip into how I use that version of me to become the version of me I am today. Because all of us have a chance to become somebody new based on habits or ideas or things that excite us that we want to pursue. And so for me, it's very much how do I get to the same spot that they are or have been, build that relationship there, and then take them on that journey that involves them. And a lot of times that's sharing a story and then asking questions to include themselves in that story and to remind them, oh, wait, how does this apply to me, not just Jen? And when you do that, that's when the story becomes not just motivational and inspirational, but actionable. And you really want these people to take action when they're done with listening to you, because otherwise, that inspiration, I mean, it fades. And so for me, I'm always asking people, okay, do you see how this is part of your story? What are you guys thinking about? And it causes them a moment to reflect, remind themselves that this is their story too, and then gives them actionable items to execute at home, which keeps the message alive longer.
So powerful. Do you know, I'm a firm believer that you don't switch up the actual message, certainly not the movement, audience to audience. That should be your core, right? Always through line. But what you do switch up is you do your homework on who the audience is, what their language is, what are their unique struggles, right? And that you meet them with the story. I love the way you said that you want them to find themselves in your story. You're not just saying how fabulous you are and all the things, right, that you accomplished in your life. There's a purpose in telling those stories to help them achieve that next level, that micro win that they can get in that that short span of time that they're going to have with you. So I absolutely love that I mean, you have achieved quite a bit. You can just like fly on the cloud, I guess, just people are fascinated just by your journey alone. But you took it a step further in that you're going to utilize your story, not just the accomplishments that you had, but also the tragedies that you had through your accident and beyond. And we can touch into that here if we want, if you feel like you want to. But um, in those uphill battles that you had, you discovered things that can relate to me, to my life, to things that I'm going through. I mean, I'm not going to experience your same life, your same story, but I've got some stories of my own that I need to navigate. And you're giving me some insights and some hope. Yeah, I might be in the part of the story where there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of hope, but seeing you on the other side of it, you're radiant, you're getting out there and really living a life that you probably didn't dream of. It's certain of the down areas throughout that. So how do you um, relate to and to utilize your story, because now you're on the other side, you're
Yeah.
triumphant, and we all have new levels, new devils, like new peak, new challenges, but still you're to the outsider looking in, it's like, well, what is she gonna, how could she bring value to me? She's like got this fabulous, look at how great she looks, she's got things going for her, and I'm just feeling like I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. How can you remember where you were when you are so far removed from that later on? How do you tap into that?
Yeah, I wish I was so far removed from all my problems. Somehow they resurface and it's like whack-a-mole. So you're like, "Oh, wait, I've done this before and here it is again. Awesome. Thank you, universe."
New
One of
level,
my
new devil.
yes, one of my favorite stories to share when I talk about training for Mount Everest is but I had like 2 fears about taking on Mount Everest. One was the Khumbu ice fall, And the other one was this move called the Hillary step, which was the crux move about 10 feet below the summit. That's the minute I said yes to Everest, I thought about that Hillary step multiple times a day, every single day, being like, man, I hope I can do that step. I hope I can get through that section because wouldn't it be terrible to be 10 feet from the top of Everest and see, just kidding, this didn't work for me. I'm going home without a summit. And so this like step haunted me. And we were finally on Everest. We were a day before the summit. And then it got really loud. Like every step I was taking, I'm like, okay, I wonder what it's going to look like. I wonder if I'm going to be okay. What's it going to be like? What's it going to do? And our team took turns on whoever was going to be first during different sections of the climb. So all of a sudden, it was my turn to be first again. And I was kind of leading this section. And I got to this area where I started seeing flags. And I looked back at my Sherpa and I'm like, where do I go? He's like, "You're at the summit. We're at the summit. Celebrate. We're at the summit." I couldn't even celebrate because I'm like, "No, no, no. We can't be at the summit. Where's the Hillary step?" And he's like, "Oh, we had so much snow this year. It's not a factor. No Hillary step." And I'm like, I'm sorry, no Hillary step. You don't understand how much space that step rented in my mind for the last year and a half of my life. It must have been somewhere I want to see it. And so we walked over to this edge. He's like, see, Hillary step full of snow, full of snow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. And that story we can all relate to because there's some fear that we made up in our mind that we're convinced is going to sink us. And we like contemplate it for hours and days and weeks and months and maybe even years in some circumstances. And then you get there and it's not a thing. Not a
Oh,
thing.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
We do. We create this big chasm, this problem before we're even there. And a lot of people just turn around and turn back just because of all the big, that big, the way that
That
they blew
big,
it up. And
hairy,
then you
scary
actually,
step that's not maybe there, just to let you
that,
know.
and then even if it is there, to traverse it when you're there, right?
Yeah,
It's not as scary as you build it out to be. I see that with speakers quite a bit. If they can't be a seven-figure speaker, they're just it takes some flipping work, right, to build a seven-figure career in this life as a speaker and a corporate trainer. But it's so worth the journey because many won't. They're going to turn back. Another thing we spoke about just before we got on the interview together is how um, sometimes you got to climb that mountain multiple times before you reach the summit. Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, is that failure? Maybe you would have gotten halfway up Mount Everest. In your
yeah,
case, you actually made it in that one. But what if, right? What if you had to go back down, get back to base camp, get resituated, and then go back up again? Is that a failure?
right. So I'll bring you to the story. So I got to Everest and I refused to watch videos or talk to a bunch of people and things like that before I did that climb because I didn't want to psych myself out. And I figured, okay, if people have summited it before, I'm going to be okay and I'm going to summit it. And I don't need to know any details because I'm just going to train my little buns off and be ready to go. And so when we get there and my team collects, I'm like, okay, now it's time to go up to Camp One. I literally thought it just took a long time to get to the top of the mountain. And so that's why we're going to Camp One right now. So we get up, we go to Camp One, which when you get there, you feel terrible because there's not enough oxygen in
I'm
the
so
air. And like every step you're fighting for. And you're sitting there thinking, like, what did I sign up for? This is crazy. Who even does this? And so we stopped to have a snack and a glass of water and just try to regroup. And then my guide said we were climbing down. I'm like, "Climbing down?" I'm like, "You can climb down. I'm not climbing down. Meet me back up here when you wanna come back up." He's like, "No, we have to." I'm like, "We have to?" He's like, "Yeah, it's called acclimatizing. You have to go down to base camp, and we stay at base camp for 3 days. And during those 3 days, the stress that we had in this lack of oxygen environment forces our body to make more red blood cells, and over those 3 days, as we make those more red blood cells, when we go up the mountain, we can now climb higher because our body's adapted to the environment." And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, Is this not life where we think we're going to start at base camp and we're going to make it all the way to the summit, but very rarely is it going from point A to point B. A lot of times we go up the mountain, we hit a setback, a frustration, a spot that says, "Hey, you're not continuing to go forward anymore because it's too much risk." You come back to the boardroom or to base camp or maybe to your kitchen if you're in a fight with your spouse, and you say, "Okay, what did I learn? What do I know now that I didn't know before? How do I integrate these lessons into my life so I can climb higher up the mountain?" And when you climb Everest, you go from base camp to camp 1, down to base camp, up to camp 2, down to base camp, up to camp 3, down to base camp. And even though you're walking in the opposite direction of the summit and it feels like failure because you're going in the opposite direction of the summit, you realize that's required to acclimatize to safely make it to the top of the mountain and come home alive. And so now, whenever I'm hitting these like frustration points or setbacks or obstacles, I use the word I'm acclimatizing. I'm not failing. I'm okay. Like this is part of the process. And it just gives you so much power to continue to climb.
How relevant this is to the speaking industry and the corporate training industry.
Yeah.
And I had it wrong. I thought, you arrived and you got your Sherpa. And I hope you're in shape, right? You're going to get up. But that makes so much sense that they would do that. And it is very, very parallel to
Mhm.
a real life, right? And a real career. I think that those who maybe hit the ground running and just by some dumb luck they reach their summit in one pass, you see those people implode all the time. You see these
Yeah.
very rock stars or some breakout athlete, and they didn't have that acclimation, so they never really got those foundational lessons that you need to have when you do have success, so that you don't basically kill yourself, right, or
Right.
implode. We see this all the time in the speaking industry. I think that there's an idea in a lot of emerging speakers' minds is, hey, I'm an expert in this field. I'm very well known in my industry and my space. And now all I have to do is just let people know I'm available to speak or corporate train, and I'm going to hit that summit, right? It's just going to happen for me. And they get very disoriented when it doesn't, right? It doesn't matter how fabulous you are. We're all starting at base camp, and we
Mhm.
need to. And you make that climb, you learn some lessons about yourself, about your audience, about the industry at large, right? And then you go back down to the basics again. And those who do not revisit the foundation, they just keep pushing through and climbing, they're in for some trouble
Mhm.
and not as stable of a career. Certainly not the longevity that they're going to need, because you didn't get acclimated right at those next levels going up. So, what did that specifically teach you, especially when you faced maybe some bigger tragedies in your life? How did those principles help you through some other areas of your life and your career?
Yeah, I think it just gave me permission, right? That this isn't a linear climb. Sometimes you climb down to climb up, and these setbacks. I mean, I wrote a book called Break Proof, and the title is called Break Proof because when you break, you have proof of what was working, what's not working. Do you even want to continue to climb this mountain, or do you want to pivot to something different? And so if we just keep going on autopilot, we don't have these moments of check-in and really ask ourselves, is this what we want to build, or are we just rolling with the flow of things? So momentum is a very strong thing. You just need to make sure it's working for you and not against you. And sometimes you need to take a little break to realign, recalibrate, and continue to climb. So I think it's a very important thing on whatever our mountain is: physical, metaphorical, relational, like all those things.
Absolutely. So you had the foresight, thankfully, because there's a lot of people that don't make it back from Everest, to hire the right team, right? To
Mhm.
link up with the right Sherpa. Um, how in just daily life or building out our career, how do we scale sustainability? Can we do it alone? Or what is your advice there with regards to your climb team?
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And so for me, when I decided to climb Everest, like I couldn't call my mom and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna climb Everest." She would think I'm crazy. I mean, she still thinks I'm crazy, but in reality, she had never climbed Everest. She doesn't know anybody that's climbed Everest. She doesn't even know anybody that's wanted to climb Everest except her daughter. And so when I wanted to climb Everest, I called a coach who trained people to climb Everest. And then that coach introduced me to a couple people that had climbed Everest before. And so then I went out to lunch with these people and they spilled ketchup on their shirt just like I do. And they told they made the pursuit human. It made it real. And they met me and they're like, "Okay, you're going to be fine. We know who you are. We can tell your personality type. We can tell your fitness level. Like don't worry about that. Just get out there and start training." So I think when we take on these big goals or these big summits or these big ideas of what we want our speaking career to look like, interviewing and hiring coaches and mentors and people that have been on the path that we have been on make it so much easier. Like I was able to climb Everest a year after I decided I wanted to do that. If I didn't have all those resources and those people on my team, it would have taken me years and I still wouldn't have had the confidence of like, this is what I'm doing. When you hire somebody that's climbed Everest and they build your training plan, all you need to do is execute that plan. I don't need to question it or wonder if this is even enough or is this going to work. They know it works. They've done it. So you like get all these energy leaks closed and now you got to put all that energy into what you're doing. So I've always used the motto big mountains take big teams. If
Mm.
you're looking to build a big speaking career, it's going to take a big team to do that. And the faster you hire competent people, the more you get to trust them and the more you get to use your talent and your energy for your story.
Spot on. I'm so you're singing my song, Jen. I love it because it's heartbreaking to me. My backstory, if whoever in my audience listens to enough of my episodes, they'll hear my backstory and why I'm so passionate about those hidden gem voices are out there. Like you had some some celebrity, but it wasn't going to carry you all the way,
Mhm.
right? It might have opened some doors for you, but you had to do a lot of legwork yourself. And your voice and your experiences were only going to be the answer to a certain sector of people's prayers, right? The solutions that they were looking for, that they could hear from you in a way that they weren't going to be able to hear or capture from somebody else. And I just say that because I think that there's this unspoken understanding. I don't know where it came from, and it's so off base of, okay, I'm fabulous, and all I need to do is get an agent, and I'm going to have the career that I want. It takes more than that, right? You're going to be sitting on the sidelines a whole lot if that's what you're depending on. But if you're willing to take some personal responsibility, invest in what is so worthy of an investment, right? The speaker life, a trainer life, you get to impact, you get to go to some pretty fabulous places, and you get to make a really nice living. It's worth the investment. And there's just gotten to be this mentality out there where um, you could have told your Sherpa, right? You do the climb for me, and we'll just say I did it. I'll just go a few steps. And he's like, no, you gotta do this right alongside me if you're really going to reach that summit. And whether it's a speaking career or any really profession in your life, no one else can do that for you. They can guide you, they can keep you out of danger, hopefully, keep you out of going the wrong direction and circling that mountain until you're so exhausted you can't go any further. Um, so having the guidance, having the right team is so essential. And I don't know why in the speaking industry for I hear every single day, right? I'm not really willing to make an investment. You build my career for me and I'll throw you some commissions, right? And it's just like that's fine for the sideline speaker who may want, a talk
Mhm.
every want to talk a month or, every few months. But for that person who's serious about really summiting this career, they know there's going to take some elbow grease and some commitment from themselves, an investment. You invested in your trainers, you invested in your team, but you also put the work in. Like I'm sure that even after the training sessions, right? You're preparing yourself in all the other different ways that you need to prepare yourself. It is literally a team effort if you're going to reach certain peaks in your life, in your career. And you don't get to sit at base camp and say you did the thing, right? You got to go on that journey too. Um, I've worked with speakers who are just like ahead of me, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're going a little too fast. We need to acclimate. There's some foundational things. And I've had ones you got to drag up the mountain, and they're just like, but aren't you going to do, but the ones where we can link arms and let's do this, and you learn the lessons along the way, that is the right mindset when it comes to true success. It is a partnership, and you saw that. You brought around not only the experts in the field, but I love that you also had the frame of mind to bring in other people who had actually done the thing that you want to do. Um, that not your mom, you love your mom, right? But how is she really going to give you those insights and that motivation when she doesn't even understand why the heck you want to get that cold and possibly even kill yourself doing that thing? So such important lessons there. How do you shift with unexpected shifts, like when you're talking mountains? All of a sudden there can be a storm that comes out of nowhere that nobody foresaw, right, coming. When we speak about the speaking and corporate training industries, who could have dreamed that the rug would have been pulled out from underneath all of our feet and no hotels were going to be open? Like, we couldn't even foresaw that prior to that. But what I got to witness was the speakers who shifted, made it, and actually their careers got stronger. And the ones who are like, oh gosh, my life is ruined. All of my speaking engagements have canceled. And even if I want to, I can't even try to go to a hotel or a comedy house even and try to do a talk. I'm ruined. Like, how do you shift when the unexpected happens?
Well, I think you start with understanding the unexpected will happen at some point, right? Like and you can't always anticipate all the twists and turns that our paths will take, but it's really just getting back into alignment with yourself. What do you like to do? If you like to share messages that help other people take action, then if you can't do the one venue where you're on a stage at a hotel, can you set up online trainings? Can you, like, there's so many different ways to do the skill that you have, and there's different platforms that you can share that on. So for me, it's always coming back to, like, what do I really want for myself? And based on what limitations I have, what options are open? Because it's never all closed. It's just you have to get creative and let it look different than what you think it's going to look like. And that happens in mountaineering all the time. And I think that happens in life all the time. Something happens, came out of left field, and now we have to adapt. And that's kind of what makes the field of anything we pursue exciting. So just understand that that's part of the pursuit. And it's a chance to check in, realign, and share what your skills and talents are in a new way.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna at this point in the talk, there's people who want to know how to get a hold of you. So we're going to talk about
Okay.
that in a moment. And then I've got two more insights I just would like to dive in with you before we close. Um, this time has gone by so quickly. Your story is so fascinating, and there's so much depth of parallel to climbing a mountain and doing it right, to how we have to traverse our own lives in a successful way. So first, let's start with, I'm sure many people listening at this point who are like, how do we get a hold of this Jenn Drummond?
Yes,
Jenn Drummond,
please.
how do we find you? So number one, do you just speak and corporate train, or do you do consulting as well? And how do you like to be found?
Yes. So best place to find me is jendrummond.com. LinkedIn is my favorite platform. So I'm Jenn Drummond on there, and then also on Instagram and everything else. So feel free to reach out, say hi, let me know what resonated and if I can help you. I do all kinds of things because I have one of those personalities that likes to be doing and experiencing and exploring. So I do some corporate hike events, I do some trainings, I do consulting, I do speaking. I wrote a book. I have a podcast called Seek Your Summit. So I'm into a whole bunch of different things because my ADHD needs it.
Ooh, corporate hike event. Like that sounds so fun.
Super
I would
fun.
love to hop in on one of those. But I can also see you doing corporate retreats. How
Mhm.
fascinating that would be. Just right. Yeah. So for those who are just listening in and for whatever reason, if you're driving, you can't get to the show notes. This will all be in the show notes, but it's Jenn, so two N's, and then Drummond is spelled Drummond. So two N's, two M's.
Yeah. Thank
Jenn
you.
Drummond. All right. So one of the last question I'd like to dive in with you before my signature question at the very end is you talk a lot about blending your story with strategy, presence, positioning, grit, and growth. I hope I got that right. That's a lot, right?
That's a
So,
lot.
how do you put that into practice? And can you kind of dive into that a little bit?
I mean, I like to talk from experience because then I don't have to have this story memorized. I just have to relive it. And then when I relive it, I can tap back into those emotions to bring people along on the pursuit, which I think lands for people and feels better. We remember stories more than we remember facts. So for me, whenever I'm out there, I'm always like, this is content. This is content. When things go sideways, this is content. Nothing goes perfectly. And that just gives me permission to like continue doing the thing I'm doing and then figure out how to extract the lesson from that experience so I can share it with others to help them navigate theirs.
How do you capture that content? I've talked on this show about. I had a guest a year or so ago, Cesar Castro. I hope I'm saying his name right. He was really that was a great episode as well. But essentially, he keeps a story bank
Yeah.
in his phone, Trello, or what have you. When something happens, you make that deposit of that story, so that later, when you're speaking to a certain style of audience, you can extract the stories that are best suited for them. But do you have a way that you capture these insights that just happen when you're least expecting it?
Yes. So I will voice memo often just because it's quicker and easier for me. And then I will store those stories. I use Notion, and I have about 40 stories that I can plug and play into a particular speech, which is fun because then if I talk at an organization, they can hire me to come back and talk about something different. And I can just share different stories based on what landed that I think would land in the future. So it's very important to always be a student of your environment and a student of your own life and say, okay, here's what I observed. Here's how I can help others. I test the content often on LinkedIn first. And if I get good feedback from LinkedIn, I'm like, okay, this is something I should massage a little bit further, or this is something that didn't land. So we're going to just put it over here and maybe we'll cycle it out in the future, or maybe we let it die.
Okay, love, love. Okay, so at this point in the show, we're going to shift to my signature question.
Yep.
Before we do, if you are listening to us right now, I have no doubt you've gotten value out of this show and out of this episode and out of the insights that Jenn has brought to the table. So be a giver, right? Post this forward. If you got value out of it, those in your circles will also get value out of it. So post it forward, give the likes, the loves, all the things, just because that's like giving us flowers. We love that. But that's how other people get to find us and find this message is really through the beautiful Speak Packed audience who's just so generous in the way that they give. Um, Speak Pact is all about a universal pact to make the greatest impact with the power of our voices that we can in our space, right? So what is one micro win, something that you can challenge our Speak Pact audience with, Jenn, that if they just put this simple thing into practice today, it's going to move the dial in their own life and or career. Is there something that they can just start practicing and implementing that you would recommend for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to sound pretty basic, but that's the point of this is journal. So for me, every night I know I'm going to have to write about an experience that I had today that allowed me to pause, look at something different, shift, or just think in a different way. And because my body knows I have to write about that tonight, throughout the entire day today, it's searching for what am I going to write about? Or how can I fill this page? Or what is it going to be? And so then it makes it easier to find because I kind of have it running in the background of my mind of tonight, I'm going to need to write something down. So today I better do something cool. So I have something to write down. So if you start a practice like that, you would be amazed at how many stories or themes or ideas show up in your life on a monthly basis. And then you can start like bundling those into different areas. And it just gives you more content to relate with others and connect and help your brand grow.
I love that reverse engineering. That is so cool. So if I'm understanding right, just tell me if I'm understanding this right, because I'm gonna actually try this. Um, if I know at the end of the day, I'm in a journal, I'm gonna write down something interesting that happened that day, then psychologically that triggers me somehow to want to do something interesting so that I have something to write about that night, which actually motivates you to do the thing. Am I getting it?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, it's
right?
kinda like the
Okay.
red car theory, right? If you buy a red car, then all of a sudden you see a bazillion red cars on the road. There wasn't any more red cars on the road than before, but your brain is actively seeking it because you own it. So it's the same thing with your own story. If I know I have to write something funny or entertaining or inspiring tonight, then throughout the day, my brain's seeking that thing so I can fill out this assignment that I made for myself.
Ooh, this is so good. Okay, so I journal in the morning, but I've
Okay.
never kind of reversed engineered like this at night, and I can really see the value in that. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna give it a
Yay,
try.
let's do
To
it.
me, it kind of have you heard this, Jen, where people who maybe aren't so motivated to work out every day, they just say, just suit up, put your
Mhm.
tennis shoes on, put the outfit on, tell yourself you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to do anything, but just suit up. And once you do, the scientific studies, right, have shown that your likelihood of then going and doing the thing like exponentially increases. So I can see the wisdom and the value in this. I'm definitely going to do it.
Great, thank you.
All right, Jen. Well, thank you for being a guest on Speak Pack today. You have brought a wealth of knowledge. I love your story. I love your journey. But most of all, I love the spirit behind the woman who went on those pretty incredible journeys. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us
Yeah.
today.
Thank you.
And for our beautiful Speak Packed audience, ciao, ciao for now.